Hello, everyone, and welcome to Random Encounter 232 or 232. My name is Jono Logan, and this is the first Random Encounter of 2022. And it is a brand new year. It is a brand new start. Sure, it feels an awful lot like 2021, but there's a difference. It's one bigger. So we're going to be diving into lots of video games today, and today. Here's the thing about January. There aren't a lot of game releases. There really, really aren't. It's the beginning of the year. I think this is one of the months that movie studios use to dump terrible movies. Perhaps video game studios do the same thing, but there's not a whole lot coming out this month. A lot of stuff coming out next month. Big titles coming out next month. This month, not so much. So what we are going to be doing is taking a look at some of the games that have come out in 2021 that we have reviews coming out for now. So these could be games that came out in December, or these are games that came out way before that, but a port is coming, a brand new port is coming in. So there's some pretty cool stuff coming up, and we have some pretty cool people here to talk about it. So let's introduce our panel today. So first up, we have the person who wrote the most reviews for RPG Fan in 2021, Audra Bowling.
Hello, hello. And
next up, we have the person who is who braves the games that others do not at RPG Fan to review them, Neal Chandran.
Hello.
Neal, the last time you were here on Random, it was feels like it was 20 years ago, but in reality, it was just under a year ago, back when Greg was host. I think you were on the diversity episode, right?
That is correct.
Cool. And I'm glad that you're back. And we also have Dom Kim, who I believe was also on that episode.
That is correct. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So yeah, how was everyone's holiday? Or I guess maybe it wasn't a holiday. How was everyone's, end of the year? Neal, do you have a good one?
Mine was good. It was really good to get together with people over the break, especially since last year I couldn't get together with anyone for Thanksgiving or Christmas or anything. So just getting together with some old family friends was fantastic.
That's really, really nice to hear. Dom?
Mine was rather uneventful. I actually slept through the new year.
That, in my opinion, that's the best way to get to the new year. Just wake up in 2022, look around, looking like, where am I?
Yeah, I've just been enjoying winter break right now since I finished the semester.
Nice, very nice. And Audra, how was yours?
Mine was pretty nice. I had a small gathering of family and just got to hang out over winter break. So it was fun.
That is very nice. Yeah. I'm with you, Neal and Audra. We actually had a Christmas this year, and it was a little bit touch and go there for a while because Amanda's parents got real nervous about the variant, understandably so. But we convinced them that, in fact, we haven't seen anyone for weeks, and they haven't seen anyone for weeks, so we're probably okay. So we had a nice holiday where, it was a nice Christmas dinner thing, and we had a birthday party for Amanda's dad and brother, and it was a real nice dose of normality in a time when there doesn't feel like there's much of that. So yeah, that's Christmas vacation now for me, just a little dose of normality. That's what's in the stocking this last year. And also, playing games, and I played a lot of games over the break. One of which started in 2021 and is moving into 2022. And I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot on this because this is a game that has been talked about extensively both on this podcast and in many others, and that is Dragon Quest 11S.
Ooh.
Yeah. I got it on the Steam sale, and I figured, you know what, I can delve into a 100+ hour RPG. It's Christmas break. What the heck? And I started it, and this is going to be controversial. I don't love it. I really don't love it. It's killing me. But I'm currently midway through the second act of the game, so it's not like I'm only just starting it 20 hours in. And I'm invested enough to keep playing. I'm not saying it's bad by any means. It's not bad, but it's not grabbing me. It's not grabbing me. And I got to be honest, this is, again, something that people have talked about extensively, but one of the reasons why it is not grabbing me is because I have turned the music down to 10%. I have it on orchestral score, not the synth, the orchestral score, and still, I have to hear that battle theme one more time. Oh my God, they use it for everything. Any time that there's heightened stakes, they just use it. And another thing that drives me crazy is there's a lot of songs in this game where like people are singing and to each other, and there's like little group songs and things like that. But instead of having actual music or songs like you would expect an RPG of this caliber and budget to have, it's just words appear on the screen with music underneath that has nothing to do with the song that's being sung, and it's driving me crazy. It genuinely almost stopped me from playing the game, and then I powered through and got a little bit more into the story because the story's quite good and the characters are really interesting. But oh my, it's just not grabbing me the way I was really hoping it was going to.
Aw.
Yeah, to the point where I'm genuinely considering just playing the whole thing in 2D mode.
Well, that's an option.
It is an option. It's an option that I was vaguely considering getting someone to write about and just like review the 2D version of the game, because it's the same game but slightly different. Anyway, so yeah, that's Dragon Quest XI-S for me. I'm enjoying it. I'm not loving it. I'm going to play it all the way through. But yeah, it's not working. It's not working too much for me. I can hear Solosi screaming from here. Anyway, but let's talk about some games that are a little bit newer, but still in 2021. And we're going to open up with talking about a game that is a little bit older, but it had a real big piece of DLC that came out at the end of last year. And it is something that really just shocked and delighted many, many people. And I gotta be honest, it kind of debuted and then not much was said about it. And I think the reason why is because you got to play through the original game to get to this really interesting piece of DLC. And the game is Another Eden, The Cat Beyond Time and Space. Audra, you actually took on a massive task and you played through all of Another Eden, and then you played through Complex Dream, which is the Chrono Cross DLC for this title.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big lift. And you enjoyed it. You gave it an 83. But can you tell us a little bit about Another Eden? It's from many of the people who were behind the Chrono series, so Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross. And there are, I guess you could call them homages, references.
Yes, there's quite a few very
including
big references.
I remember a few years ago when this thing was announced and we got like art for it and we were like, oh my God, it's Frog, it's Frog, it's Frog. And it's like, no, it's a completely legally distinct Frog character who's a swordsman.
Yes, he's technically a samurai.
Technically
so
a samurai.
Totally different.
For legal reasons, he's a samurai. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Another Eden? And then we'll get into talking a little bit about Complex Dream.
Well, it starts out, you're playing as a boy named Aldo who was adopted into this relatively peaceful village, and I guess it would be, since they do time frames, the present time frame, which is more like a traditional fantasy world setup. And him and his sister are living there peacefully. He's going to become a protector of the village. And this man called the Beast King suddenly appears and abducts his sister for unknown reasons. So he goes on a quest to go save her and winds up somehow traveling through time.
As you do.
Yes.
If you're a JRPG protagonist.
So he goes to the future first, and then he goes into the far past before finally kind of getting sent back to his regular present-day timeline. And then he can travel through beyond all of them freely. And there's plenty of cats.
That's about what I was about to ask. Not that I'm... Where does the cat come in? Or is that a major plot spoiler?
That's a major plot spoiler, although there is a cat catalog where you can actually collect... I think someone on the staff really liked cats.
Yeah.
So you can actually collect information on all the various cats that you find throughout the different time periods.
Yeah, I'm looking at, you have a screenshot selection in your review here, and it has many a cat and a woman in the middle of it who looks surprised that she is surrounded by many a cat.
Yes, but the cat in the title is a major spoiler. So
okay.
I'd be afraid to use it.
I might cut this out, but is it Lynx?
No, actually.
Because that would have been hysterically funny. Or is it a legally distinct version of Lynx?
No, it's
Yeah,
okay, I won't say anything.
Yeah, you don't have to say anything. It's just funny to me how many how close they get, and without being, I mean, close enough that they eventually did a crossover with the Chrono series.
Yes.
So this was originally released on mobile, and You played it on PC. How was that?
It was pretty good. The one thing it took me a while to get used to it. They don't have controller support on the PC version, which is a little
weird.
odd.
That is real weird.
So it took a while for me to get used to the point and click controls, but it wasn't too bad, actually, following that.
I mean, I guess touchscreen, point and click, but still, it seems like if you're going to be releasing it on, well, then again, it's not released on a console. It's only released on PC and mobile.
I think they're planning a Switch port at some point.
I mean, that would make sense.
Which should be interesting.
The Switch would be able to handle this thing very well. And actually, again, portable seems to be the best way to play this in many ways, from what I've heard. So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about it? It sounds like a pretty darn conventional JRPG, random encounters, turn-based battles, shops, that kind of thing. So all of that's there, right?
It's pretty much a very standard traditional JRPG in a lot of respects, and I mean it's straight up turn-based combat, and there isn't really, you kind of just get the hang of it if you've played a lot of them before, right from the get-go. I think the biggest differentiation is the gacha elements that are thrown in.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because I mean, like, it was a mobile game. I guess it still is a mobile game. And there are a lot of gacha elements, and I'm not a fan of gacha. I know that you're not a fan of gacha.
Yeah.
I know that Alana is a passionate hater of gacha after her review of the Nier mobile game. So how does gacha play in here, and how does it, I guess, impede the overall experience of the game?
Well, technically, you don't really need to get involved too much with the gacha elements. It just makes it, I think, a little easier if you want to put the money in.
I see.
I mean, I actually went through it and I didn't spend any actual money on it because they give you what they call Chrono Stones every couple of days in the mail, and that's what you use as your currency to buy new characters if you want them.
Chrono Stones, a legally separate name for
Yeah.
Hey, do the Chrono Stones break at any point?
No, they don't, actually. They do actually have the mail system is called Link's mail system, and it's delivered by a cat.
Of course it is, because Lynx would be a good name for a cat.
So I didn't really spend any money on it, but I did. It's helped me initially have a starting party at first that I kind of just went with for my playthrough.
Yeah, so the gacha is characters, right?
Yeah, it's party members that you can then have side quests for in the game and everything if you unlock them.
Is there any reason to target specific characters? Like, is it just that they look cool or they have specific things, or is there story there as well?
No, I just think the story you get whenever you happen to get a side character, you get like a little side quest eventually for them. But there isn't really, I suppose if you want the most powerful ones, you can get like 5-star characters if you want, that are the rarest to get. But they kind of don't require it.
Okay.
And you can actually raise your stats of the characters you do have, even if you have like lower star characters, through getting items and everything through special dungeons. So it's interesting. I don't think the gacha mechanic is needed at all.
But it's there.
Yeah.
So like nothing is like gated behind the gacha, I guess? Like none of the like harder content or anything?
No, none of the story content or anything is gated.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah, that's a lot more palatable than most gacha.
I suppose if you wanted to get every single character so that you then get their side quests, that would be, but you don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, something that's interesting about this particular game is that they do a lot of crossovers with other RPG series. They've done, you mentioned in your review, they did one for Persona 5, they do Tales. And the big one, the one that really grabbed everyone's attention, is Chrono Cross. And it is not just like a little like, okay, character cosmetic skins kind of crossover. Like, this is a full-scale DLC with characters and story involving the characters of Chrono Cross. And it is called Complex Dream. And you had to play through the entire game to get to Complex Dream.
You actually only have to play through chapter 13 to get to it that's when it opens up, but it wouldn't have made any sense plot-wise to have not advanced past that point.
I did read a little bit about like the central conceit of the game, and it seems to me to be quite clever how they work the Chrono Cross elements into it. Do you want to... Okay, so if you're listening now, there's going to be some spoilers here for Complex Dream, and presumably the after chapter 13. But Audra, why don't you tell us a little bit about the central conceit of the game, of the DLC?
Well, basically it starts out that Aldo, he discovers that there's an alternate reality where him and his party never defeated the Beast King at this castle that they had in chapter 13. There was a big boss fight and everything, and it was pretty epic, and they won. But in this version, him and his sister mysteriously get thrown off of the castle instead and disappear. And it's because it turns out Lynx is involved, which I thought was an interesting... So he kind of creates this alternate reality where they call it another world. Where
they also could call it the Fallen Hero timeline, but that's another story.
Yeah, and you travel to the other world at one point, and you end up encountering Harley and Kid, and you have to actually choose which one of them you want to accompany you for the rest of the story, which is interesting. I actually picked Harley, but it was tough because I like both of them.
Yeah.
And it changes some of the quests, side quests, and story content that you get depending on who you pick. But eventually you kind of advance through both realities. And at some point you run into Surge, who ends up joining you.
Mm-hmm.
And they even have Starkey show up later on, which I thought was cute. And eventually you have to battle Lynx as Fate.
Okay.
In order to prevent him from... Clearly he had other purposes for creating the other world to begin with and messing the timelines and everything. So it's a very interesting, very Chrono Cross-esque plotline.
Yeah, because, I mean, that was the central conceit of Chrono Cross, which was Surge falls through his world into another world where he died as a child. And the world is very similar, but just a little bit different. So the fact that they are doing something similar with the timeline from Another Eden is very clever. It's a very clever way to incorporate these characters. Does Surge talk in this game at all?
Yes, he does. I thought it was a little odd. But he doesn't talk nearly as much as Harley or Starkey does, or Kid.
Well, to be fair, I mean, yeah, I would hope. I mean, Surge talking at all seems wrong somehow. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed both of them, and I understand that, it wasn't the gacha mechanics were probably a little bit of a headache, but they were not bad. They sound like you got all of the content that you wanted out of it without having to spend money. If you spent money on it, I would have been mad at you.
Oh no, I was able to enjoy the game without having to pay anything, so I was quite happy about that.
So if you are a Chrono Cross fan, and there are a lot of them out there, would you recommend that people play through all of Another Eden to get to this content?
Well, actually, I did give the DLC a very positive review score. I quite liked it. I feel like Another Eden itself is actually, if you can get past the gacha mechanics, it's a very solid game.
Mm.
And I did think the way they incorporated the complex dream, it kind of just makes sense from a narrative stance. So yeah, I'd say it's probably worth it if you have the patience for grinding.
In the back of my head, I'm hoping that this is them dipping the toes back into the Chrono franchise to see if there's any interest in a new entry of the series.
That would be awesome.
It might be. I can't figure out what else they would do. I mean, they've done time travel. They've done alternate realities. Now, I don't really know where else they would go aside from that. I mean, they could always just dip their foot back into time travel because it's been a while since the first game, obviously. Well, I'm glad that this game, I guess, I would say scratched an itch because it involves cats.
Yes.
And you love cats. So did you enjoy that aspect?
Yes, I did have fun with the cat collection.
Yes. I am not a cat fan in the sense that I am allergic to them. Amanda, on the other hand, is a massive cat fan. And how I handle this is I show her as many cat videos as I can. And whenever there is a video game, I always... and there's a cat in a video game, I always call her and I'm like, look at the cat. And sometimes it's a realistic cat and sometimes it's a really stupid looking derpy polygon cat. But either way, she's like, oh, it's a kitty. Well, I'm glad that Another Eden hit all of those buttons for you. They are certainly cats are majestic and epic beasts. But there are other majestic beasts in the world of video games. and in many of them, you hunt them. You might even call them monsters. So yeah, a game that got released. It got released in
I believe it's late March for the Switch.
Yes, it got released in late March of this year or last year, because this is this year. Last year was last year. It was Monster Hunter Rise for the Nintendo Switch, and this was a very popular game. Des reviewed it when it came out, gave it a 90. Des really enjoyed it. Solosi is on record as being a fan of this series. I don't know if anyone has heard any podcast that Solosi's ever been on. But Solosi really enjoyed the series. And the PC version came out. It just came out, as a matter of fact, on the date of this podcast coming out. So, Dom, you dived into the PC port of Monster Hunter Rise, and I would love you to tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I have to say that this is I haven't played many of like the PSP versions. I've only really like heard about them, and I only really got started with Monster Hunter and World itself, which was released in 2018. But I have to say Rise is probably, even though World was already a very user-friendly experience from what I've heard compared to the older entries, Rise is, I think, probably currently the best entry point for anyone who wants to get into the series, because
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just it feels like the first really, like, it feels like more modern than in World, even in terms of like gameplay and a lot of like the quality of life changes they've introduced. Like previously, like in Monster Hunter, one of the things you do before you set out for a hunt is you eat food to get various food buffs and to get a HP and stamina buff, which is like really important when you start out, because Monster Hunter is it's still kind of difficult to get into. So having every bit of a bit of buffer room for errors is important. And for World, for the skills, you had to farm tickets separately in like a separate like side quest, like side event quest, and that was kind of a hassle. And then there were like special tickets as well that you could farm separately, because World had like a food freshness system, and if your food wasn't fresh, you wouldn't get the HP buff. So
okay.
And Rise does away with all of that. Like, you just get the tickets naturally by like making food, and you just get the HP buff naturally by just eating there's no freshness attached to it anymore. So and it's like small things like this, like they're not necessarily like big like game changers per se, but like I think small things like this really do make for like a more palatable like first time experience.
From what I understand, again, talking to Solosi and absorbing the knowledge that Solosi drips out about Monster Hunter, the Monster Hunter series has a very, interesting, unique way of development, in that there are two different development teams. There's the console development team and the portable development team.
Yep.
Which has sort of become, now that their portable development team is producing games for Switch, which arguably is a portable but is also a console. So that's getting a little fuzzy, but it allows them to release games on a 2-year scale rather than a 4-year scale. Like Monster Hunter World got released, 2 years before this. Rise, presumably the next one will be released in 2020, late 2023 or 2024. What would you say are the main differences between the two approaches of the two development teams? Because I suspect there's a lot of cooperation and coordination between the two, but the differences in tone, style, overall feel, I guess, between Rise and World, what would you say that is?
Well, I feel World's team definitely, they like make use of their superior hardware, and they really try and like make the environment as alive as possible,
which is a good thing when you're dealing with an
and
ecosystem
like
that you're hunting things in.
I mean, I said it in my review as well. World really feels like it's like a really like living, breathing world. Like you're just like a participant in it. You're not like the main character in it per se, even though you are playing as a monster hunter. And Rise definitely feels like it focuses more on like gameplay, like fine-tuning the gameplay, fine-tuning a lot of the mechanics and like new ideas introduced in World. Like in Rise, they introduce wire bugs, which it basically unlocks like a subset of skills for certain weapons, or for all the weapons rather. And the wire bug skills really, like, they add a lot of verticality to the combat, which was lacking in World unless you played something like the Insect Glaive, where you jumped around in the air. But in Rise, like now every weapon has like vertical options to some extent, and yeah, that's what I feel. Like Rise obviously they can't make a world quite as lush and as detailed and like as high fidelity as World. So they make up for that by just fine-tuning the gameplay, I feel. Whereas World really tries to go for the more holistic experience.
That makes sense. I mean, despite that, it looks like it's a looker of a game, especially I would imagine on the Switch. Does it look good on the PC?
Oh yeah, it looks fantastic on the PC, and it runs really well as well, I have to say. Like with World, I had a couple of hitches early on with like frame rate, but Rise just works great from the get-go.
Oh, that is really, really nice to hear.
I mean, disclaimer, I didn't like fully max out like 4K resolution, like 144 FPS the game. I just played at I think at 120 at 1080 to 1440 usually. But even then, like I didn't get any frame rate issues at all. So
and that's a perfectly acceptable frame rate and a perfectly acceptable resolution.
Yeah. So I don't doubt that it's going to scale perfectly fine to 4K as well for anyone who can handle that.
if your system can handle that.
Yeah.
Not handle it personally, like, oh my god, it's 4K, and you just pass out. I mean, there are people who, if they did get their hands on like, I don't know, a 3090 Ti that was just announced, they'd probably have that exact reaction to 4K. I might, to be honest. Just seeing a 3090 Ti in person would probably make me react like that.
That's true.
You mentioned that there are a lot of excellent quality of life enhancements in this as compared to World.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say were some of the most important for you? I mean, you were talking about the food issues earlier, but are there any others?
Yeah. One of them is mega potions. I guess this is like also kind of a straight up buff. Like in World, like how healing works in Monster Hunter is in World, you would if you decided to heal with a mega potion, you would slowly chug a mega potion over the course of like 3 to 4 seconds, and your health bar would like slowly fill back up. And the thing is, this like does not work in endgame content because monsters are so fast and they will just hit you out of the animation within like the moment you start chugging. So like healing options in the end game for Iceborne and World was kind of very limited, or not limited, but you had very few options for like really effective healing. But in Rise, like when you start chugging a mega potion, it instantly fills up a part of your health bar, and then it slowly fills the rest as you finish the chugging animation. And currently in Rise, like we don't have master rank content yet. It's still only just low and high rank. So even if it was just the old chugging, I don't think it would make a big difference. But I feel this change is going to be pretty big once we get to master rank content in the summer of this year, I believe. And I feel like that will just make it a lot less resource intensive for players, because to get those specialized healing items in World that will just heal you instantly, you'd have to like farm separately, and just the whole it's a bunch of busy work before you actually like do the exciting hunt, which some people appreciate, I guess. But for me, like, setting out to like gather plants for like the 30th time because I ran out of like mushrooms for my potions it gets boring. And it does feel like busy work after a while. So I appreciate that they're like cutting the fat on this stuff and really focusing on the hunt.
I do enjoy that a fantastic quality of life feature is essentially learning how to shotgun a potion. Just like, no, first year, it's first year one's chug. What you do is you poke a hole in the bottom of the potion, snap it open, put it over your mouth, and just fire it in.
Exactly. Where was this technology in World?
Yeah, the fraternity system did not evolve in World, but in Rise, it is very well. It's well and good. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of content that's going to be coming out for Rise in the next few months. Actually, there's going to be. What is it? Sunbreak?
Yes, that's the big expansion in the summer that we're all excited for.
Yeah, and it's being released on both, right?
Yes, simultaneously, I believe.
Yeah, last week when we were talking about the 30 most anticipated games of 2022, Solosi was very excited about talking about Sunbreak.
I bet you had a field day.
Yeah, so that's coming out. That's coming out this summer, and it's going to be adding quite a bit of content apparently. And it sounds like it's going to be a full-blown expansion too. It's not going to be something you can do from the top.
It's probably going to be like a $40 expansion, like Iceborne was. It's going to be its own game almost.
Which will be very much appreciated to those who are looking for more Monster Hunter and do not want to wait 2 or so years for it to release on the PlayStation 5, presumably, or PlayStation 5. 2 years, there'll still be a PlayStation 5 in 2 years, and like no one will be able to get them anyway. It's still going to be 2 years in the future, and they will still be a rare commodity. Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, from what I've played so far, since I also played like an early access version of the game, I haven't really been able to play multiplayer properly because it's just me, pretty much. But
hello, is anyone here?
Yeah, but even just playing the single player, I was still able to clock in like 120 hours before I started getting like, this is a bit stale now. So I imagine that once multiplayer unlocks, it'll be plenty of fun to just do stuff with friends, and it'll be, I think it'll be a fun time before sunbreak.
Good, before the sun rises. Oh wait, that's probably exactly the pun, isn't it? Yeah, that is the joke. Yes, now I understand. Well, thank you, Dom. Monster Hunter has been around for a few years now. When did the first one come out?
I believe like early 2000s.
Yeah, you're right. 2004 for the PlayStation 2. So this has been around for it's a fairly long running series. It'll be 20 years in 2 years.
Yep.
Wow, that is, time flies. Yes, so 20 years is a pretty good time frame, but there are some series that have been out even longer than that. For example, 30 years. But despite this, they are considerably less known here in the West. And one of these series is Super Robot Wars. So Super Robot Wars is it's a franchise of both anime and video games. But it's not one that we know here because it's never really been localized, despite the fact that there are tons of them. There have been a few spin-offs, but the reality is that we don't really know about it until now, because Super Robot Wars 30, which is the first mainline game in the series to make it to the US, came out a few weeks ago, and Neal reviewed it for us. And Neal, this was your first Super Robot Wars game, and why don't you tell us a little bit about the series and why you think that this should be a series that we are familiar with?
Okay, Super Robot Wars is one of those series the title's been rattling in the back of my head since my earliest days at RPG Fan. RPG Fan is the reason I even know Super Robot Wars is a thing. And I'm talking before I even joined the staff in 2004.
Okay, to be fair, I was thinking, to be fair, it's the RPG Fan's the only reason I know it exists either, but mine is considerably more recent, which was you saying, hey, can I review Super Robot Wars 30?
But, yeah, the series has been around since 1991. But when I first joined RPG Fan's forums back in October 1999, several members there were active importers who were super fans of Super Robot Wars. So because it was sometimes talked about, the series always had a little bit of a mystique for me, and finally being able to play a mainline Super Robot Wars game almost seemed like I was checking off an item from a gaming bucket list, albeit a back burner item. But anyway, what is really cool about Super Robot Wars is that it's, an amazing crossover game that features characters and mechs from all kinds of anime. We're talking classic anime like Mazinger, Getter Robo, Combatler, to newer ones like Majestic Prince or Knights and Magic. And in most crossover games I've played, the setup to bring disparate characters together sometimes feels contrived, but Super Robot Wars historically crafts its crossover world in a way that it somehow makes sense. Somehow in Super Robot Wars 30, it makes perfect sense that Fu, Umi, and Hikaru from Magic Knight's Ray Earth seek mentoring from Ryoma, Hayato, and Benkei from Getter Robo. Somehow it makes sense. It feels right. And it's just totally endearing.
I recognize some of those words that you just said.
I'll admit, to a certain extent, you have to be a fan of mecha anime to really just get into the game. But that being said, there were several characters and mechs I didn't recognize that made me think, I should check out the anime they're in, and I actually did.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's like, in many ways, this can be a gateway into a variety of series.
It really could, yes. And even though Super Robot Wars 30 obviously has tons of references to, various anime series and even a few nods to prior Super Robot Wars games, you don't need to have, researched the entire multiverse to get into it. This is the perfect jumping point into the series. Yes, the menus have a ton of lore if you're willing to read through it, but even if not, you can just enjoy a really fun strategy RPG with tons of cool robots from tons of your favorite anime, and in a storyline that somehow makes sense, even though the concept is basically, upturning your toy box and putting like all your toys from, different series together.
Yeah, that's what it struck me as, but I'm impressed they stuck the landing on the central conceit of the game, the idea that it's playing with all your toys on your bed, but it makes sense. It doesn't feel contrived. That's impressive.
Yeah, usually crossovers tend to be hit or miss, so sounds like this is a hit.
Definitely, and I'm pretty sure that is why, like, even in the early days, importers have been super fans of the series. Like they would talk about, the magic of Super Robot Wars, and back in 99 when the importers were talking about it, I didn't quite get it. But then when I played Super Robot Wars 30 this year, I was like, oh, I get it. I get why it's magic. Because, I don't know, I feel like when I'm describing it, it doesn't seem like anything more than your average crossover, but it's one of those things where if you play it, you kind of see it.
It just works.
Pretty much.
Yeah, in terms of, for those who are curious, if you wish to... Oh my god. Okay, well, I think that if RPG Fan ever does a "so you want to get into Super Robot Wars" feature, it's going to be a long one because there are 47 mainline entries.
Oh my god.
Oh, wow.
What?
And that's not including what look to be like 12 spin-offs. So that is a lot. Woof, I'm stunned into silence.
Right. And the few Super Robot Wars games that came to the West in the early 2000s were a few of those spin-off games. And those spin-off games featured mechs and characters that were completely original to the Super Robot Wars franchise.
Presumably because they thought it'd be a lot more accessible to people that weren't familiar with the anime series, is that it pulled from.
Perhaps that, because anime was not as popular back then as it is now, but also I think a big challenge of the mainline series coming over was perhaps licensing fees and everything for all these characters.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes complete sense that they would be terrified of that. That would be a lot of contracts to navigate. Probably not as many as Smash Brothers, but close.
Definitely.
Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay of the series. So it's a strategy RPG, or a tactical strategy RPG.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how it plays?
If you've played any other strategy RPG in the past, whether we're talking like a Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem or Disgaea, it's very much like that. If you've played one of those games, you can easily jump into Super Robot Wars without much difficulty. Yes, you move your units around the battlefield, get into battles. The battles themselves have spectacular animations. Hey, it's great seeing, mechs from my favorite anime fighting each other with the theme songs blaring in the background.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly good looking title. What you mentioned in the review is that it looks like a high definition 16-bit kind of aesthetic. And it's very appealing. It looks a little bit more polished than pixel art, but very reminiscent of pixel art.
Oh, definitely. Like, yeah, navigating your mechs around the battlefields, yeah, those graphics aren't, as flashy as, the animated sequences or anything. But when I'm navigating my troops around the field, I don't need the flash. I just need to be able to see where my troops are, be able to smoothly pan the camera around so I can see the lay of the battlefield and be able to move them around, and being able to customize, different aspects of my mechs, power them up properly. There's plenty of that too. So, like most strategy RPG fans, like tinkering around in the menus to really fine-tune their units the way they want, and Super Robot Wars has plenty of that.
Well, yeah, I would imagine with robot customization, especially.
The only caveat I could really give with Super Robot Wars 30 is that if you're from, say, the Fire Emblem school of strategy RPGs, Super Robot Wars 30 is definitely skewed a lot easier.
Okay.
Yes, there are 4 difficulty levels. There's beginner, normal, hard, and expert, but I know a lot of veteran players say that even expert was not as challenging as they would have liked. But for me, playing on normal, I'm not exactly hardcore. So normal was fine for me. Yeah, a few battles spiked a little, but it was nothing I couldn't handle.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an argument that, it's an argument that is continuing over what is the best difficulty level for things. And my personal preference for everything is I go with the default. And that seems to be what the developers intended. And if I want an extra level of difficulty put on top of that, I will. In fact, I'll tell that in a second. It's another Dragon Quest thing. I want to keep talking about this before we close out the episode, and I don't know, rant about Dragon Quest 11 for a little bit longer. I'm sorry. It's like the only person who I've been able to rant about this game to has been Amanda, and she's tired of it. She's like, then just stop playing it. And I'm like, no.
You don't understand.
I only have 60 hours left. So you mentioned in the review that there are some unintuitive UI choices made with this game, which is a shame. Do you think, is that like baked into the series, or do you think that is a localization issue?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I mean, for me, my issue with it was that if I was playing with the mouse and keyboard, I could change the button and mouse commands the way I wanted to, but I prefer playing a game like this with the gamepad, but with the gamepad, I couldn't change the default button configuration.
Oh.
I got used to it, but I would have liked to be able to just remap those controls.
That's a fairly basic accessibility thing, accessibility feature that most games just kind of come with right out of the box now. Actually, I think it might be Game Maker's Toolkit, the YouTube channel, that does videos on accessibility and end-of-the-year accessibility. And apparently Japanese games do tend to lag behind Western games in terms of accessibility options, and even basic accessibility options such as being able to remap controller buttons. So it's kind of a shame that that feature wasn't there. But on the other hand, it's kind of remarkable that we got this game at all.
I know. The first ever Super Robot Wars game released in the US. It's like, I feel like any other year, Super Robot Wars 30 in the US would have gotten a bit more fanfare, but we've had so many monumental releases in 2021. Like, we had a new Tales game, which is one of the best in the series. A brand new Shin Megami Tensei game. A brand new amazing expansion to Final Fantasy XIV, and so many more. So,
I mean, I think that's one of the nice things about RPG Fan. And I know this is something, well, I mean, you were talking about it when we started talking about this. One of the nice things about RPG Fan is we do try to put a spotlight on a lot of games that normally wouldn't get a ton of oxygen because the oxygen's being used up by the Tales series or Shin Megami Tensei or that kind of thing. And like you mentioned, Super Robot Wars was a title that you discovered through RPG Fan. And I think that's one really nice thing about our site, is that you can find these hidden gems. You can find the games that should be getting more play, but aren't, just aren't breaking through in the same way that we would hope they would for a variety of reasons. One being 2021 was just there wasn't very much oxygen to go around, period, to be honest.
But it was an amazing year for gaming.
Yeah.
That's the one positive takeaway I can think of for 2021.
Yeah, there were a lot of really great games that came out last year. And we will be featuring those in just a few weeks in our year-end feature, and we'll also do an episode of Random focusing on that as well. Are there any other entries in this that you would like to play? Like, have you looked back and said, wow, that'd be kind of cool to give it a try, like the original or anything like that?
Not really. Because I feel like everything that I ever, I guess, wanted, for lack of a better word, from the series, that magic and the mystique that all the import community was buzzing about during my early days in RPG fan, I feel like I got it all with Super Robot Wars 30.
So this would be, not only is it a good entry point of the series, it is the only entry point of the series.
Win-win. And again, like I said, it's the reason I got back into watching anime again, and I've grown to enjoy several series thanks to it.
And I think that is, the game looks cool. It looks, the graphics look pretty darn good, look very, very true to their inspirations, I imagine. But I think that's the interesting thing for me, is the idea that by playing this crossover, you get exposed to a variety of different properties. And you might be able to, if a certain design or something catches your eye, you might want to, play, see what it's like.
And the gameplay itself is pretty addictive. Even though I've beaten the game, reviewed it, I'm still playing it. I'm on my second playthrough because there's two protagonists to choose from. They're both very different. There's two completely different storyline paths, and the fact that, and I just like seeing one protagonist personality playing off the different personalities, playing off the characters differently.
Yeah, it sounds and looks like a pretty cool game. Well, let me just say to all of you, thank you very much for coming on and talking about these games. I know for a fact that many of our listeners, and actually anyone who plays video games, have massive backlogs of games. It's just part about being a gamer today. There is no oxygen because our backlogs are breathing it all. And that can come with a certain level of, I guess, paralysis. Like, I got a lot of games during the Steam sale for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I can't wait to dig into these. What do I want to play first? Oh, no. Which is like the worst question, because you get paralyzed. There's just so much choice there. So yeah, if any of these games sounded interesting to you and you were looking for something to put right to the front of your backlog list from 2021, all of these reviews can be found on the site. They'll be in the show notes if you want to dig in a little bit deeper to them. And we will have our year-end wrap-up coming in a few weeks. But for now, I'm going to rant about Dragon Quest XI a little bit more. So, remember what I said? We were talking about like difficulty levels. Yeah. So I have a bad habit in RPGs, especially turn-based RPGs. I like grinding. I find it very relaxing. I find it almost therapeutic in a way. Just it's you just go and you grind. I discovered very quickly that if you do that with Dragon Quest XI, you are going to become overpowered really, really, really fast. Like insanely fast, to the point where all of the challenge of the game is sucked out of it because you're killing bosses in 3 hits.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that almost, I'm not going to say ruined the game because the music did that, but it damaged my enjoyment of the game. And then I remembered there was a feature at the very beginning of it, Draconian Quest. And you can pick, like, at the beginning of Dragon Quest XI's, you can pick features to make the game harder on you. And one of the options is super tough monsters. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm just going to turn that on. And then I discovered that because I started the game, I couldn't. So I spent an entire morning trying to figure out how to hack the PC game in order to activate that later in the game than I was supposed to, which is an advantage to being on PC, I guess. And I did it. And all of a sudden the game got way more fun because I wasn't just like blindly plowing through it. But yeah, I found the game a little bit easy So if anyone's planning on starting Dragon Quest XI, I would highly recommend taking a very good look at those options right off the top, the Draconian Quest options, because you cannot turn them on once you start the game, unless you go to extreme stupid lengths like I did. Anyway, so yeah, that's the end of my Dragon. Well, it's not the end of my Dragon Quest XI's rant, but that's all I'm going to have time for in this episode anyway. Now, before we go, I wanted to toss out a discussion question to the panel. And New Year's resolutions are they didn't used to be controversial, but now they are, because they are always sources of stress and anxiety. And frankly, they're just a pain in the butt for a lot of people. I stopped making New Year's resolutions a few years ago when I realized that I wasn't doing anything with them. I discovered something a couple of years ago. One of my favorite YouTubers and podcasters, CGB Grey, and Mike Hurley, they have a podcast called Cortex. They came up with a concept called yearly themes, and they have a yearly theme journal. So instead of making a resolution, they come up with a yearly theme. So something that is it's like a North Star for your year, rather than being like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds by March. It would be like the year of health. So as long as you're constantly working on your health throughout the year, that is a successful year of health. And it doesn't give you a concrete goal that has a fail state to it, which I really, really like. Now, if you like New Year's resolutions, that's awesome. What my question is for the three of you, what is your gaming New Year's resolution, or I guess New Year's theme, or whatever you have? What is a thing that you want to focus on in 2022 about video games, or not about video games, just about, you personally? And would anyone like to go first?
I'll go first.
Sure, Dom.
Well, since you mentioned it, yeah, clearing out my backlog is kind of unrealistic at this point. So my resolution for the year is actually just to finish every game that I do end up buying on Steam sales, or to at least try them.
That's a good idea. Trying them is important.
Yeah, because my backlog started to become quite ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, mine too. It's a problem, but I mean, I guess it's a good problem to have, because you have all of this to look forward to. But on the other hand, I look at it and I'm like, I'm going to die before I finish all of these games.
Half the time I'm like, when did I get this? Why did I get this?
For me, the question of why did I get this is usually answered by, it was the free game from Epic Store this week.
I can sympathize with that.
Yeah, it's a problem though. And actually it's a good New Year's resolution. If we're framing it as a theme, maybe the year of completion.
Oh, I like that.
The year of progress, the year of backlogging.
I like year of progress.
Yes, I like year of progress too. Well, thank you, Dom. Audra or Neal, what about you? What is your New Year's thing?
Mine would be just to chip away at my backlog, actually.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Let's just call it the year of progress part 2.
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate that. But I'm looking at my Steam list right now. I'm like, I'm gonna die before I play Mass Effect.
No. Oh no.
Life is Strange. Yeah, I want to play Life is Strange, but life is also short. And yeah. So how long is your backlog, would you say, Audra? I mean, it's got to be stalled at least, because I keep dumping new games on you to review.
It's fairly large.
Is there anything that you've started recently on your backlog that you're excited to get to?
Yes, Suikoden, Woven Web of the Centuries.
You told me a little bit about this. It is not one that's available to us, but
it is if you import it.
Yes, that is you went the path of the OG RPG fan, and you imported.
Yep.
Neal, how about you? What would you say is your resolution, video game or otherwise, for 2022?
In terms of gaming, mostly to kind of stay the course I'm on in terms of game life balance, because like many of you, I had such an insurmountable backlog several years ago, but then I did a massive purge, and now I've become a lot better at not just impulse buying games or making sure, or buying more than I can handle.
Mm.
So I'm looking to stay the course with that, be more mindful of, my gaming purchases and everything.
The year of self-restraint on Steam.
And pretty much, because I will not forget what it was like having a backlog so much that playing video games started feeling like work. Like it was a chore, just to get through the backlog. So I'm just like, nope, I do not want to go back there again.
I think I'm going to take inspiration from all of you, actually, because mine is going to be backlog focused as well. But I'm going to say, okay, this is going to sound terrible until I explain it. Mine is going to be the year of good enough. I am going to, I guess my theme or my guiding light is I am going to be working on my backlog next year, but I'm going to try to resist the impulse to finish every game I start. If I start playing a game, and I don't mean like immediately, but if I'm a couple of days in and I'm like, I'm not really enjoying this a whole lot, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do something else. Like I have a bad case of when I start something, I need to finish it. Yeah. And that put me through some terrible books, TV shows, movies. So I am going to give things a try. And if they are not to my taste, I think I will put them aside for the time being and focus on things that are. Because there are always more games to play. There are always more books to read, movies to watch. And I don't think the idea of stopping should be seen personally as a failure of mine. I think it should be seen as a decision of mine to move on to something that, frankly speaking, might be more my taste. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's how I think I'm going to tackle my backlog next year. I'm going to be doing an ice cream sampler of games. I'm going to get the little spoon and I'm going to be like, give me that. And I'm going to taste it and be like, ooh, I'm going to try that. And I'm going to play that game. And I'm going to, get a little ice cream sampler of another. And I'm going to go, oh no, that's not what I ever want to put in my mouth again.
Hey, I mean, I do that with a lot of things because, I feel like, my time is precious. My time is valuable. So I want to spend it I want to, recognize the value of that time with things that really speak to me.
Exactly. So if someone offers me a small spoonful of I don't know, Saga chocolate swirl, I'm just going to be like, nope, nope. Well, thank you all very much for coming on the podcast with me today. I really appreciate it. This was the first episode of Random Encounter of 2022. It will not be the last. As you know, we do episodes every 2 weeks, alternating on Mondays. We alternate with our RPG fan music podcast, Rhythm Encounter. If you enjoyed this episode, we have lots more. If there's any games, something that I actually have done in the past for both Random and Rhythm and Retro Encounter is if there's a game that I'm really interested in, such as Dragon Quest XI's, or if I'm playing it, I'd like to go into the RPG fan, backlog and see if any podcasts have been done on that topic. And that gets me some very interesting perspectives on games that I'm currently playing. So, for example, Dragon Quest XI's, there have been podcasts done at RPG Fan with that feature Dragon Quest. I recommend to do that. Now, if you enjoyed this podcast, that's great. Thank you very much. We do have some other podcasts, and they are going to be having many other episodes coming up this year. Retro Encounter with Mr. Mike Solosi. We just did our year in review episode, and it wasn't really our games of the year episode. It was more just taking a look back at some games that really made an impact on us in 2021 for a variety of reasons. Audra was on that one with me and Mike. Yeah, and it was a blast to do. Coming up next on Retro Encounter, we have an episode that is focused on not RPGs, which Solosi has done once in the past, and this is going to be part 2. And then that's going to be followed up by January's game, which is going to be Skies of Arcadia. And those are going to be hosted by Alana, and I am super looking forward to those episodes because Alana she's a fan, shall we say, of Skies of Arcadia. She has dabbled and likes it a little bit. So I'm super excited to listen to those. We also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fans Music Podcast. In the last episode, it was cocktail time. They were the panel was focusing on songs from games that reminded them of a variety of drinks, whether those drinks were alcoholic or not. And it was a super fun episode to edit, actually. And the music in it it's really, really cool and slightly different than a lot of Rhythm episodes. in that there's a variety of different kinds of music in that because there's all kinds of different drinks. And then coming up next week, we have the Smash Brothers arrangement of RPG music rhythm episode. So that's going to be cool because, I mean, Smash Brothers has some music in it, has a song or two, some of which has come from RPGs. So that's going to be really cool. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can fire me off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for future episode themes or discussion questions, anything else you'd like to share, just feedback, please feedback. If you want to contact me directly, you can do so at jloganrpgfan.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Jono_Logan. So if you want to add me on Twitter, feel free. And we have some other people on this podcast, and they also have internet presences. Audra, where can we find you online?
You can find me on my email, audrab@rpgfan.com.
Cool. And Neal, where can we find you?
My personal email on the site is Neal, CHNEALCH @rpgfan.com, or for industry folks, PR@rpgfan.com. And on Discord, I'm Neal CH RPGFan.
Cool. And Dom, where can we find you?
You can find me most of the time lurking on Discord under the tag of DH Canny.
Cool. So yeah, thank you all for coming again. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. Help us get the word out. You can rate us on iTunes and other podcast players. And yeah, so I hope that you have a wonderful 2022. We will be here with you. I want to say every step of the way, but because we're, bi-weekly, every second step of the way. But if you listen to Rhythm Encounter, every step of the way. So thank you again. And whatever you're playing, have fun.